everyone. It's me again. And I'm here with Rosy McCann, one of my favorite humans, to talk about feeling well and eating well and what happens in women and hormones and food. And oh my God, there's just so much to absorb. Hello, Rosie.
Hello. Thank you for having me here, Monique. What an honor and a privilege it is to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you for being here. We get to see and understand more about what food can be our medicine and medicine can be our food. Rosie is going to co host our upcoming Women in Leadership Retreat at the beach on May 2nd to the 4th. I hope you guys can check that out. We're going to, it's very rare that I get together with women of any age without somebody saying, I just don't feel well. My hormones seem to be off. What used to work for me isn't working for me. I can't lose these 10 pounds. I don't sleep well anymore. Any of the above, all of the above. What's up? What's going on?
Well, first of all, I'm glad the conversation is there because sometimes people just don't notice what is going on in their body. So the fact that you're hearing that there's an issue is really the start of it, right? Noticing that there is a challenge, noticing that you're in a season of life where it is a little bit harder, maybe, to lose weight or you get tired just a little bit more easily, but it doesn't have to be that way. And so, what I'd love to unpack with you today is just talking about, not just eating for the season of the year, but also eating in the season of life.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's absolutely do it because people my age are saying that they said what you just said. It's like, I don't feel well, I don't sleep well. I don't The things that I used to do 10 years ago don't work for me anymore. I have fatigue. The workouts that I used to do don't have the impact they used to have. It's all of this bundled sleep, fitness, food combination that seems to be the perfect storm for especially for women.
Yeah, it is bundled just like you said, right? And we need to take a holistic, right? Holistic everything view of all those pieces in our life and kind of reevaluate our lifestyle choices every few years, even every year, like, make that a ritual to at the beginning of the year, just be like, okay, what's working and what's not working. That's super important, especially if you want to continue feeling good and transforming into that next stage of life.
So how would you advise, let's unpack just that one quick thing, because that's how we're going to start the retreat, is what is working for you in your life and what's not. From a fitness, wellness, and holistic perspective, how would you do that inventory? How would you advise somebody to do that inventory?
So I think the most important thing, which you've already mentioned, is paying attention, right? So if they're already saying, I'm not sleeping at night, I wake up with achy joints, I'm fatigued by 3 o'clock, that's paying attention, right? And so paying attention and noticing what you notice is super, super important. Once you've paid attention and you have the awareness of what's going on, okay, so now how do we change it? And so this is where my learning and coaching of Ayurveda, which is Ayurveda is the science of life. It's the sister science to yoga. It's a 5,000-year-old science, right? It's not new information, but it just helps us to actually live in rhythm with nature. And so, and when I say nature, I mean, all of nature, right? The seasons, the time, the foods, the elements, right? The ether, air, fire, water, earth. Those are all elements that are in everything, including in our body.
I think we forget that,
Yeah.
because you'll have somebody say, oh, I love astrology, I'm a fire sign, I'm very fiery. Okay, that's great. What happens in here? So unpack that, because that's really fascinating.
Yeah, so we all have doshas, right? So there's 3 doshas. There's 5 elements and 3 doshas, and, without getting too involved in it, the major ones are vata, which is, air and ether, and pitta, which is, fire, and then there's, kapha, which is water and earth. And so these 3 doshas, right? So like if you're a fiery person, like you said, right? That's a pitta, right? You're more of a lion. If you're a vata, right, which is air and ether, you're more like a hummingbird or a bee, right? Real quick and light. And if you're a kapha, you would be more like a sloth or an elephant, slow and earthy and
Steady.
yeah, so those are kind of like if we had to pick the animals to go with the elements. So you understand kind of where those doshas come from. So once you know the dosha you were born in, right, your prakruti, then you can know what your nature is, right? So if you are a fiery, if you're a pitta, you know that that's your nature. So so for example, Monique, if you are a pitta,
I am.
in the summer, right? When it's hot, you don't want to do hot things because they're going to raise your pitta level, right? So you want to do cooling things. Pittas in in any season, but mostly in the summer, shouldn't be looking for hot things to do, like hot yoga, for example, right? Because you're already hot and then you're bringing more heat into the body. You want to do more cooling exercises. Like for a pitta, swimming is ideal, right? And that cools off that fire. But one of the things that is super, super easy to remember in Ayurveda. So, if I want to have one nugget for you to take away, it's super, super easy is that like increases like and opposites balance, right? So, how I was saying that a pitta wants to go in cool water, that's the opposites, right? Hot and cold. And so, that's how you want to work it. So if you just remember that, like increases like and opposites balance, that's huge in making lifestyle changes that actually work for you as an individual, right? So there's 20 gunas or 20 characteristics that we look at in Ayurveda. And without, going into a lesson here, some of them are like heavy and light, dull and sharp, cold and hot, oily and dry, right? So like if you were a dry person and you went into the hot sun, your skin's going to get even drier.
Sure. Makes sense, right?
And if you're a dry person, it's so important to oil your body from the inside out, but also from the outside in, right? So oil on the body, but also taking in oils, right? So if you're a dry person, right, which is more of the vata or the later season in life is called the vata season, right? You want to oil frequently. You want to oil your body with oils, and you also want to take in oils like the omega vitamins. So, eating oily fishes are really helpful as well. So you want to oil from the inside out, avocados.
That's great. I mean, think about that just from a helpful perspective. If you approach this balance of opposites in your head, it's sort of like I think you had said it to me when we were talking about this episode about a woman who could be in menopause and having hot flashes doesn't realize that when she takes her hot yoga class, she's actually exacerbating her situation.
Yeah, in that season of life, more moderate exercise, like the swimming in cooler waters, yoga, meditation, restorative, more yin style practices, right? Even depending on your activities, right? So somebody that's in menopause may really do well by doing those slow practices like yin yoga. holding poses, if you're not familiar with what yin is, holding poses for 5 minutes. It brings that stillness to the mind as well, which is super important with hormonal changes.
That's really interesting. So let's just say somebody's listening to this and they're like, yeah, but you don't understand. I need to lose weight. And I know that I need to do aerobic activities and I need to, train and lift heavy weights. That'll be a response. What do we say to that?
So again, it's all about the individual, right? So is that individual a vata, a kapha, or a pitta? That's the first thing that I kind of try to see. If they're a kapha, which is heavy, earthy water sign, then they do need vigorous exercise. Even if they're in that later stage of life, they'll need that vigorous exercise just to get their blood moving. Whereas a vata, who's air and ether, is very light. And so they want to be a marathon runner because they want to go, 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 go. But that's not the best exercise for them. You want to ground them, you want to bring them down. So maybe instead of marathon running, or hot yoga, their better exercise would be hiking or walking barefoot on the beach, grounding exercises for that air and ether person. So again, it's very individualistic. Whereas, a lot of people look at it as a blanket thing. For menopause, do this. And it's not a blanket thing. Each person is so uniquely created. And so that's what I really love about Ayurveda, is because it's so individual. And I just, every client that I speak to, it is every individual has a different plan because you're so different, right? You're going through a different stage of life. You have different likes and dislikes, right? There's not a one size fits all for exercise, for eating, for any of it. There is no one size fits all. I know we all want that magic pill, but Monique, it doesn't exist.
I know, right? If it did exist, you'd make a lot of money by giving it out. Here you go. Here you go. So I think there's an overall disconnection between people's bodies and what they think they're doing. And I'm a layperson. I don't have half of your degrees and certifications, but something like this. Oh, I eat really clean. I I I exercise and I eat really clean. I don't know why I'm, gaining weight, right? Or why I don't feel well or whatever. And then I've seen you unpack it in the nicest of possible ways. But so tell people how you've unpacked that statement. It's like, oh, I eat great. How do you respond to that?
So I think part of the challenge that we all have as humans is we have selective memory, right? So we sometimes think that we're doing all the right things, but they may be the right things that you did 20 years ago and don't actually work for you in this season of life, or in even in this stage of what you're trying to accomplish, right? So the first thing that I suggest for anybody that I meet with, even most people before I meet with them the first time, I have them write down 3 days of everything they eat, how they slept, and everything they drink. So that's to start for 3 days. And most people will come to our first encounter and say, wow, like that was an exercise just in its own, because people don't usually do that unless they're super into fitness already and are doing fit trackers. And, there's all sorts of ways to track. But most of my clients that come with me with an issue have not figured that out yet. Right. So if they're coming with, I'm achy every day, or I'm falling asleep at 3 o'clock at my desk, the first important thing is to just break it down. What is going on, right? How is your sleep? What is your sleep cycle? And not just the amount of hours that you're in bed, but actually sleeping, right? How many steps a day are you taking? So these are not for judgment, they're for noticing and witnessing what you're actually doing, because sometimes we think we're doing better than we're actually doing. Or, like I'll have somebody that'll say, "Oh, yeah, I eat really well." And then as soon as you have them start writing it down, "But I ate out 3 nights last week and I did have 3 cocktails, last week, or I did have 2 glasses of wine," and not that any of that is bad, right? We don't talk about good and bad, but it may not be something that is nourishing to you in this stage of life, or it may not allow you to thrive. So again, we break it down and look at what your lifestyle habits are and how we can slowly change those habits, because habits will only change when you incorporate them one at a time, and really the ones that are working. Right after a few weeks, if it's not working, if you're not seeing results, let's move on. Let's find another habit to incorporate.
Yeah, absolutely. When I came to one of your yoga retreats, a bunch of things happened. Well, a bunch of things. I learned a bunch of things, and one is definitively the dry brushing and the coconut oil on the body has been a permanent resident in my bathroom, and it's a daily habit. I think if I miss one day a week, it's a lot. So I'm really, really addicted to that. So is the oil pulling the coconut oil in the mouth. I've completely converted. I haven't seen a Listerine bottle in a year. No, 6 months. All right, let's not exaggerate. 6 months. But what I did really try to hone in on was the circadian rhythm, which I'd like you to unpack for people, because I feel that has made when I'm on track, it is an enormously helpful tool. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure, I'd love to. So, there is in Ayurveda, there is a cycle to the day. It's called the circadian rhythm, right? And so just like we talked about those elements, there's different parts of the day that are dominated by an element. So, for example, 10 to 2 is pitta time. So that's 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., but also 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. So that's pitta time. And if you remember, pitta is fire, right? That was your dosha that you connect with. So during that pitta time means that it's our fieriest time of the day. So the earth also has times, right, where the different doshas are more prevalent. So 10 to 2 is going to be when your brain works its best. It's the most fiery. So between 10 and 2, if you have to write a hard email, have a hard conversation with somebody, do a difficult project, do something that's a lot of intense brain work, 10 to 2 p.m., 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. is the best way to do it. This is my favorite example. Same thing, 10 p.m., the fire starts up again. So if you're not in bed by 10 p.m., you get that second wind. Has that ever happened to you?
All the time. I've done so many second wind projects, and then I'm exhausted the next morning.
And then here's a question for you. How many times in college did you write your best papers between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m.?
Amen.
So that fiery time, that pitta time is that, hard work time. So if you're not in bed by 10 p.m., this changes a lot of people's sleep cycles. If you're not in bed by 10 p.m., that hard time that your body goes to detox everything is lost, right? So if you go to bed at 11:30, that's an hour and a half that your body needed to decompress and to begin the detoxification process, digestion, detoxification, all of those processes happen in that deep sleep. And the later you go to bed, the more time you're taking out of that hard working window that the body needs to do all this heavy lifting. So, being in bed by 10 p.m. Same thing with getting up in the morning. In Ayurveda, you really want to be up before 6 a.m. So it depends. Usually they say with the sunrise, but, in the summer, the sunrise is at, 5:30. In the winter, the sunrise is at 7 AM, right? So or, similar window to that. So getting up at 6 is it's sometimes dark. But 6 AM starts the Vata window, which is that light, airy window. That's the time that you wanna be up already. That's you're gonna get that light time. And so it's harder to wake up in that after that window's over. So your body begins to get ready to wake up. So that's why a lot of people get up at like 4 AM because it's that cycle of, your body's trying to wake up already.
Yeah, it's very funny that you said that because so for me, unless I have someplace to be, I let my body tell me when to wake up. So I'm fortunate in that I don't have the little people to get to school anymore and all that stuff. So I get the sleep that I need or that my body is telling me that I need. So if I go to bed by 10 p.m., it works like a charm. I get up at 7, by 7, right? Or sometimes 6:30, sometimes 6, but I get the 7, the 8, or do I don't do well with less than 8 hours of sleep. That's what I know about myself. 8 to 9 hours is what I'm getting every night because that's what I need. I don't know. But I feel better when I go to bed in that rhythmic routine because then my body just says, "Okay, you're ready, you're refreshed." And if I notice if you hit the snooze button or if you go back to or you roll back to sleep and you get into another cycle, you wake up more tired, less refreshed, it feels to me. I don't know, this is what I notice about myself.
Yeah, which, we sleep in 40-minute cycles. So if that snooze is only 10 minutes, you are going to feel a little bit more tired when you wake up, right? So your body has about a 40-minute sleep cycle. So otherwise, then when you snooze, it's just really a little cat nap. You're probably just better off, especially like a kapha person who it's really difficult for them, that heavy earth, water, elephant, sloth type personality. It's really important to put your alarm on and just get out of bed. No rollovers. No rollovers for kaphas.
That's it. No rollovers for kapha. Wonderful. So, is for those the women who are listening and saying, these hormones are killing me, my lifestyle's killing me. Where do I start? Where do you suggest that we start to unpeel the onion?
So part of it is just like we talked about before is noticing and having awareness, right? So the challenge is really being honest and truthful with what's going on, right? So if you are noticing those symptoms already, like that you're not sleeping, that you think that your hormones are imbalanced, I would suggest getting them checked, just so that you have this baseline. But look at your lifestyle and then, start making choices that will be that will allow you to flourish, right? And thrive. So perhaps it's eating seasonally, right? Like, making sure that you're getting lots of greens and vegetables, right? So that might be your first start, right? If you notice that you're eating a lot of packaged foods or a lot of breads and heavy foods, now is the spring. You want lots of greens in your diet, all of this really light food for the spring, right? We go from those heavy rices and porridges and oatmeals to a lighter breakfast, maybe switching it up to, fruit and yogurt and some flaxseed. So just taking a look at where you can lighten things up for the season. Another thing that you can change is the stress level that's going on. Notice the stress, even eating, right? So making time to sit down to eat, making time for a meal and not just, racing and eating it in the car, right? We hear a lot about these cortisol levels that are so high. That is part of the challenge that we're having with this weight is, high cortisol levels, right? So you want to make sure that your stress is at least be aware of the stress and then how you can lower it. So walking, get some exercise, right? So walking, yoga, meditation, maybe having a ritual in the morning. Starting, it's called in Ayurveda, it's called a dinacharya, and that's a daily ritual, right? So beginning to build that daily ritual. And usually with clients, I'll build a day ritual and then I build an evening ritual. So your evening ritual may be like, I have this alarm set on my watch that at 9:30 it reminds me to start getting ready for bed.
Love it.
So that this way at 10 p.m., I am in bed, lights out. So building those rituals, that night ritual. So your night ritual might include a tea, a hot tea, maybe a chamomile or a nighty night, maybe some magnesium, which is a muscle relaxant and helps you fall asleep. Exercising daily obviously is 10,000 steps a day is what the American Heart Association suggests, but at least getting that in. And if that's not where you're starting, figure out where you're starting and then try to improve it by a few percentages every week, right? So where start where you are and then work towards your goal.
That's great advice. I notice for myself that when I, make sure I disconnect from the electronics and the screens in advance of my downtime, getting ready for bed, I do much, much better. And something interesting just happened is I didn't sleep well this weekend, and I noticed I drank this weekend and I had dessert. So for me, the combination of sugar and booze, it just was like the perfect storm, and I woke up like 3 or 4 times a night to go to the bathroom, which I know is my body's way of just trying to get rid of the stuff that was in it, and so I did something last night. I said, I was talking to a friend about de-alcoholized wine, and so I'm on a quest to find the best wine I can find that doesn't taste like crap, right? That doesn't taste like grape juice. And I think I found a couple ramps. So I did find at an event. I was in an event, and this woman wasn't drinking, so she asked the waiter to bring her a non-alcoholic, and they happened to have a Spanish Tempranillo, which was fantastic. I bought it. I bought a bunch of stuff. Anyway, last night I had white wine that was de-alcoholized, and I had none of my little dark chocolate sweet thing at the end of dinner. Slept like a baby.
Yeah. So, Monique, that is exactly what we're talking about in that notice what you notice what's going on, notice how each behavior, each habit that you have and the consequences of it and making adjustments, right? It doesn't mean that you can't have your wine. It may just look different in this season of life because it's disrupting your sleep. And if it's something that you truly love, then you wind up finding a really great substitute for it or just saying, "You know what? I'm going to have my, wine and I'm going to know that the consequences are I'm not going to have a good night's sleep."
Yeah. I mean, I know for me, tequila works much better than wine. When I have wine, I wake up, I have a hot flash or two, I sweaty or whatever. I know that I do better with tequila and vodka than I do with wine. At least, if I'm going out at night, if I'm going to have one glass of wine, it's fine. But if I have more than one glass,
Yeah, and again, that's not a blanket statement. That is for Monique, right? And so, for me as well, like, I am very blessed. I did not have hot flashes. I didn't have, you know, a lot of symptoms during menopause. And part of it is just understanding your body and then making those adjustments, knowing how you're sleeping, what you can do to get better sleep, and your sleep and your bowel movements are key um, things to definitely indicators of how you're doing, right? They're key indicators. So it'll tell you what kind of day you had yesterday.
poop doesn't lie. It might be full of, but it's not a liar.
And your sleep doesn't either. Your sleep will tell you, right? If you're having a stressful day and you didn't decompress or, detox in the right way, it's going to show up. It's going to show up by being up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Just understanding the body and again, being witness.
Yeah. One of your brethren, my dear friend Kathy Degani, who's also a holistic nutritionist, she says just because it's common doesn't mean it's normal. And because a lot of women around you are having hot flashes, like I didn't have a lot of hot flashes, I at all. And I noticed for myself that it was very, very contingent on what I ate. It was so contingent on what I ate. And so when I got off my normal track, or what I was my preferred track and my preferred regimen, it didn't feel good. It just did not feel good. But just because all of us are complaining about a similar thing doesn't mean that it is the normal thing. It can be modified. It can be impacted. With that in mind, you're going to share this wisdom with the women at the retreat, and I'm so grateful for you and you being able to do that for us. Is there anything you want to share to this group about what you would leave them with? Just thinking about.
Well, I was just going to comment on what you said is, that one statement of like increases like and opposites balance, right? You noticed the hot flashes and what was affecting you, right? And so, notice what the symptoms are and try to bring in the opposite thing. So that's really what I would leave you with, is just that little nugget of Ayurvedic wisdom, which is like increases like and opposites balance. If you're feeling hot, find a way to cool yourself off, right? If you're feeling cold, find a way to warm yourself up. If you're feeling dry, find a way to oil yourself up.
Yeah, for me, I noticed that exact thing when I'm frenetic or I'm stressed. I need to do the meditations. I need to do the yoga. I need to do the stillness to get myself much more grounded, because if I add like a frenetic activity, a movement activity, I get worse. And I didn't know the Ayurvedic, representation of that. I just knew that from a being connected to my body type of person, that didn't work for me. Like if I went out for a run, I wouldn't do that's not good. It's going to make me even more frenetic, more anxious. Thank you. Oh, do not forget that Rosie's journal, Notice What You Notice, is available on Amazon. Rosy McCann, thank you so much. We really appreciate you. Make it a great day, ladies and gents. See you soon. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to Possibilities with Monique DeMeo, where we unpack life as a female mover and shaker. If you like the show, please consider liking it, or better still, subscribing to it and leaving us a rating. It truly does help. Also, you can pick up my book, The 7 Secrets to Creating a Life You Love, a practical guide for women in leadership. You can find the book, other episodes of this podcast, and how to stay in touch at moniquedemeo.com. DEMAIO. I look forward to seeing you again soon. With gratitude, Monique.